Now, Peter in Milton Keynes thinks that Jacob Rees-Mogg might make a good replacement for Nadhim Zahawi. He joins me now, the former Business Secretary and MP for North East Somerset. Jacob, I hope you can hear me from there. Thank you for joining me on the Sabbath. As a lapsed Catholic, I can do this work, but I'm very grateful for your time. What's your reaction to the news that the Prime Minister has sacked Nadhim Zahawi?
Well, I feel very sorry for Nadhim, who I think is a very decent man, has been a very successful businessman and an effective politician. And the report seems to show that he made some technical errors with his declarations under the Ministerial Code, and the Prime Minister has decided that they were serious enough to fire him. So I feel sorry for Nadhim Zahawi, but I think that after it dominating the headlines for a week, the rule of politics is that if you do that, it's very hard to remain in office. And so the Prime Minister was under great pressure to get a new party chairman.
Should he have acted sooner, though, Jacob? I mean, it has dominated the headlines. It's overpowered his own message. It's overshadowed Jeremy Hunt's speech in the week, which I'm going to get onto with you in a moment. This has gone on too long, hasn't it?
I think that's a very difficult question to answer, because you don't want Prime Ministers to be bounced into replacing members of their Cabinet the whole time. And this is the second member of the Cabinet who has had to go after Gavin Williamson. That the opposition are always in the hunt for their next scalp, so to speak. And Prime Ministers have to be aware of that, and there has to be a reasonably high standard for resignations. There also has to be some loyalty to the team that is around you, otherwise you won't get loyalty in return. So I don't think it's as easy as saying as soon as there's any whiff of controversy, a minister must go. Otherwise, you'd find it very difficult to keep any ministers.
Although, as a Boris backer, you might say that what goes around comes around. I mean, Nadhim Zahawi was among those who brought Boris Johnson down.
Well, no, I don't think Nadhim was particularly, actually. I mean, he accepted the appointment as Chancellor. He may then have briefly wavered overnight, but I don't think he was instrumental in bringing Boris down. As you know, I think it was a mistake to remove Boris Johnson, who was an excellent leader of the Conservative Party and is the biggest figure in British political life, even out of office.
Should he be brought back into the Cabinet then as the new party chairman, Jacob?
I think it's very difficult to bring back Boris Johnson in a subordinate role, that he's such a big figure that he would dominate any cabinet that he was in, even as a less senior figure than Prime Minister. So I think that would be very hard to do. But he has all the right attributes for a party chairman. He is charismatic, he rallies the troops, he's a sort of fully leaded Conservative. So I think that type of personality would be a very good one for party chairman.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're ruling it out. I mean, Peter in Milton Keynes, Jacob, has suggested that you might also fulfil that role.
Well, when it turned out it was somebody called Peter, I thought perhaps one of my children had got on the line and was suggesting office for me. But it's very flattering of him. But I think the Prime Minister needs to appoint as party chairman, if you look at the most successful party chairman, somebody who is very close to him politically. So John Major and Chris Patten were a very effective team. Margaret Thatcher was very effective with Cecil Parkinson particularly. And it is one of the really important roles, particularly in the run-up to an election. So the Prime Minister would be well advised to have one of his closest allies in that role.
Are you saying that Boris Johnson isn't a close ally? I mean, they work together very closely as Chancellor and Prime Minister. And as everyone keeps on saying on this show this morning, Boris Johnson is the most effective campaigner for the Tories at a time when they are more than 20 points behind in the polls, Jacob.
What you say about the effectiveness of Boris Johnson's campaign is absolutely spot on. I mean, he is extraordinarily charismatic. People stop their cars to get out and talk to him and stop their vans and so on, which they don't generally do for politicians. But the Prime Minister and the former Prime Minister are inevitably not the closest political allies. Just look at the circumstances of the summer.
Yes. And how about you, though? Do you think actually this government is falling apart and you're better off out of it? Maybe you don't want to re-enter the fray because there is the kind of stench of decline about this government.
Oh, no, 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 no. Look, I'm a loyal Conservative. I want the Conservative Party to do well. I want Rishi Sunak to do well. I'm supporting him as leader of the party. I don't think changing leader is a sensible thing to do. I think changing leader last year did us nothing but damage. So, no, he has my support. I want him to succeed. And the Tory party has recovered from worse positions than this in the past. Just remember where we were in May 2019, when we had the worst election result in our history and went on to win a majority of 80.
Well, I'm sure there are more bad election results to come in May. But on that subject, you say that he's the Prime Minister, but he's not the Tory members' Prime Minister, is he? We heard from Jake Berry earlier in the week suggesting that the membership should have been given a confirmatory vote. Presumably, as very much the party man, you would agree with that?
I don't see the point in a confirmatory vote. I don't see where that gets you, that if there's only one candidate, it's a bit North Korean if you then have a vote. What I'm in favour of is party members maintaining their right to elect the leader of the Conservative Party. I think that's fundamentally important. I think it's democratic. It's why people join the Conservative Party. And I think those who want to take it purely to MPs ignore the history of last year. The problem last year wasn't caused by the members of the party and the country at large. It was caused by members of Parliament.
But the trouble is that the Tory membership don't really want Rishi Sunak. They wanted Liz Truss, regardless of how that ended up. They also don't like some of these policies. Presumably you don't like them either. The idea that Jeremy Hunt appears in the week talking about the economy and then rules out tax cuts. You must be tearing your hair out as a Conservative at the mere notion of 6% further on corporation tax, for instance. You can't back up any of these governmental decisions because you don't agree with them, Jacob. Let's be honest.
Well, I'm not a great one for tearing hair out, really, but your point is a perfectly reasonable one. I think that the increase in corporation tax may well lead to lower rates of revenue coming in, that the decrease in corporation tax led to a very significant increase in corporation tax revenues. I think they went up by 50%. So I think you need to look at taxation sensibly and see where the Laffer curve works and where it doesn't. There seems to be quite good evidence that it works in terms of corporation tax. And bear in mind, when George Osborne cut corporation tax, he had done a dynamic assessment of the effect it would have, which is very unusual for the Treasury. The Treasury usually does it on a static basis. And that's why he came to the conclusion that cutting the tax would actually benefit the revenue. So I've said many times
that I
think that...
Well, Jeremy Hunt's making a mistake then, because he's the one who said the only tax cut that the public needs right now is a cut to inflation. It sounds to me like you're saying that he should axe this decision to add 6% to corporation tax in the March budget.
I think cutting corporation tax would make the public finances and the economy stronger rather than weaker. As a general rule, however, I'm not in favour of unfunded tax cuts. I think they need to go hand in glove with cutting government expenditure. The state is spending and taxing too much money, and it's not even delivering the services that people want. I think a lot of this is people working from home, and therefore services are not of the standard they should be, but that we need to get the size of the state under control and then have the tax burden that is necessary to afford that, rather than thinking that the state can get bigger and bigger and poor hard-pressed taxpayers can pay more and more because they can't.
OK, so a cut in spending might be needed. Now, finally, I'd like to ask you about your new GB News show. Jacob, what are you going to be doing? Who are you going to be speaking to? What's going to be the theme and the look of the show?
Well, I'm very excited to be doing it. I think GB News is such a fantastic outlet, supporter of freedom of speech, and close to its viewers and listeners. And I think that's important. I think what you're doing in Milton Keynes today and so on shows the rapport that GB News has with its viewers. And that's what I want to build on. So I want it to be a programme that people watching think is on their side, representing them, battling for the things that they believe in. And I hope to have a wide range of guests coming on. I hope that people will come on who disagree with me, because very often
Jacob,
conversations with people who disagree with you are more fun than those who agree.